Well, hello, I'm Dave Riccio, and welcome to my podcast, a place that recognizes that everyone is an unrepeatable miracle of God and has a great story to tell. I'm sitting here with John McHatton,
Hey, very good, Dave.
a new friend and mentor in my life, and author of Gratefully Grieving. I'm going to ask you all about it because I want to hear about it. But I read it twice now, and it's a love story, and I didn't expect to feel the kind of emotion that I felt when I read the book. Oftentimes, I found myself tearing up.
Mm.
So, when you decided to write this book, what was your inspiration? Was it a way to express yourself? Was it a way to help others? Was it a way to grieve? Was it a way to heal?
Well, it's great to be here with you, Dave. First of all, writing this book, I didn't know I was writing this book.
Mm.
And this was a 7-year journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually was journaling for the first time in my life. And I was journaling because part of being healthy is you have to have a healthy mind. And in order to have a healthy mind and a healthy spirit, along with your physical body, you need to go to the mental gym every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that through journaling. And so I started out journaling every day what I was grateful for.
Huh.
And that was the secret and really the key to growing through grief.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was writing these things even before I knew that I entered the journey of grief.
Yeah, when I read the cover, gratefully grieving. I mean, grieving doesn't sound like an exciting thing that I want to go do. I want to go grieve. It sounds like a roller coaster of emotions. I've had some of my own grief in my own life, and really understanding where I'm at and what's happening to me, and what the grief is all about. This book took me through that grief process, but through your eyes, and I could feel and experience what you're experiencing, and nothing. You say in there that grief is one of those things that it's loss that touches us all. We're all going to go through it at some point.
Absolutely.
This
Absolutely.
book is about a 46-year marriage.
45-year marriage, and we met each other at 14.
Okay, junior high. Was that freshman?
It was freshman. My
Okay.
freshman year, Kim walked into the church where my father pastored, and
That was it.
That was it. That was it. Saw her, and I just knew in my heart.
Mm, that's the
And
one.
she saw me and didn't think anything. But anyway,
Really?
it's,
Is that the way she told the story?
yeah, basically, I think we were going steady our first year, and so at the end of the first year, I looked at her and I said, Kim, I love you. And she said, John, no, you don't.
Right.
You don't know what love is.
Right.
And so that was the beginning of a beautiful love relationship that we got married when we were 20.
20.
So it was about a 50-year relationship.
That's incredible. You don't hear a lot of those stories in modern days, that people do that. But the journey, this was now Kim was a twin, right? She had a twin brother,
That's right.
Tim.
Tim, yes.
How did he take to you? You're dating a twin.
Well, actually, he was the reason why Kim said yes to going steady with me,
Okay.
because I was a singer.
Uh-huh.
I was a boy soprano
Okay.
with the Phoenix Boys Choir, and he was a star athlete.
Okay.
Weightlifter, champion weightlifter, national champion weightlifter at 14, okay, and 15. But for some reason, he really liked my voice and he really liked me. And so I actually asked him to ask Kim to go steady with me. That's the kind
That
of
was a safe move.
man that I was.
Safe move. Man up and
And,
ask the brother to do it for you.
yeah. And, I kind of understood how to get things accomplished, whether or not it was me doing it. But it was very interesting
Uh-huh.
to have the twin be someone so strong and I was so weak.
Uh-huh.
And Kim's dad was a pro football player, semi-pro
Okay.
football
No
player.
intimidation on your
No,
part.
oh, no intimidation. In fact, I asked Tim if I could wrestle him, and he was a state
Yeah.
champion. And he tied me in a knot in about 30 seconds, probably less than that. And Kim comes out of her room and she says, "Tim, don't hurt the little guy." Okay, so yes, I've had a journey of stripping of male ego as well through
You got
through
that out of the way
years.
right off the
Right
bat.
off the bat.
So, so this is a lifelong love that you have, and I want to describe the way I met you. Okay, I didn't know you a year ago. I don't think I knew you. We were talking 5 months ago, maybe
Mm-hmm.
at the
About
most.
that, yeah.
In my experience of the first time I know your now wife,
Mm-hmm.
Alice, Dr. Alice, and I hadn't seen her in probably 15, 18 years, something like that. And so to show up to your guys' house, gave her a hug, and then I gave you a hug, and it was probably one of the most genuine hugs I think I've ever had. And my girlfriend Shauna, I told her about the hug, and she said, "Oh yeah, you talked about that hug for weeks."
Mm.
And the thing about that hug was that there was something in it that was genuine and real that I could experience. And I'm a feeler. I'm very sensitive, so I'm very aware, whether I'm comfortable with people or not. But the sense that I got from that hug is this guy has been to hell and back, and he's still here, and he's still got a smile on his face, and he's still grateful. And I think that I'm sure it wasn't always a smile through the process of this book. There's a lot of heart, and that's the hell part, the hell and back. And so when I read the book and I go through, this love and the connection that you have with Kim, you call her your one and only,
That's correct.
and she is literally the one and only,
That's correct.
up until Alice today.
Exactly.
And that is it's a profound love and connection, and you end up the last 5 years being her caregiver.
Yes. She had a bout with diabetes. It was gestational diabetes. And she was, an athlete. She was a star athlete herself. And, on the Palm line and all of that. And so when she became pregnant with our first child, she developed that gestational diabetes. And we didn't really understand what that was.
Mm.
And so, me being a wonderful husband, she said, "John, I really would like, let me see, how about a banana split? How about a hot fudge sundae? And, with fries, please." "Sure, dear, whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, we didn't get out of that sugar addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And, just the process, she didn't have any issues for years,
Mm-hmm.
but then it hit.
Yeah.
And she fell, broke her shoulder. I moved to DC to work on the Hill, and she fell, broke her shoulder, and that was the beginning. Because the diabetes, her shoulder didn't. It took long, then infections, and so in the 5 years of caregiving, we'd probably been in the hospital 20 times.
Yeah. That's significant. This is your love, and a lot of it fell on you, right? So you were it. And toward the end, as I read the story and kind of what you went through, is that even when you came to hospice, she wanted you there. So you were there by her side pretty much the entire time.
I was. And, I became, as a result of Kim's difficulty physically and my understanding of health, I actually became a health coach so that I could be 24/7 with Kim. And towards when she went into hospice, it wasn't just her choice,
Hmm.
it was my choice. I wasn't going to leave her. I mean, even if we needed nurse care, then
Hmm.
that's great. I'm going to be there because she was my life. And I think that's the importance of finishing well.
Mm.
In a relationship, and I learned this as I walked through this journey of grief, as in a longevity of relationship, the brain actually becomes one. The mind
Mm.
becomes one. Because I heard John Kim or Kim John for 50 years.
Yeah.
And so when someone would call me John, my brain would associate it with John Kim.
Hmm.
So we became one. And and that was very important for me because I felt like a part of myself when Kim passed away. I felt like a
Mm.
part of me wasn't there. In other words, I wasn't there. I was a non person.
Mm.
And in a longevity relationship, that's what happens. And and we might get into this about abandoning yourself to each other. And when that happened, that was a game changer. That really was a lifelong lesson of authenticity. And that's probably what you felt when I hugged you.
Yeah. It was very real, and it was warm, and it was someone who understood. It almost, I think, there was no, you're meeting somebody for the first time, and for somebody to be that open. And I knew you knew of me from your wife,
Hmm.
Alice,
Right.
but you didn't know me from anybody really. And with men in general, hugs are sometimes can be awkward, a little bit. And in my family, we weren't huggers. So I didn't realize that till I was hugging this guy from a group I was part of, and he goes, "You hug weird." That's what he told me, and I said, "Okay." And so I had to realize, yeah, I hugged weird because my family. I went for a bike ride with my brother today, and it was only like about 2 years ago that we decided, maybe we should hug once in a while. Goes, okay, so when we hug, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of awkward, but the hug was genuine and warm. But that was because I think through this process of grieving, as I read it, you became emotionally literate. And that's part of your health coaching and journaling and doing all those things. Some of the emotions that stick out to me that you talk about is shame. Shame. You talk about the shamer and a long drive of listening to the shame station from one town to the next. You talked about that. And I don't know that everybody recognizes shame in their mind. And so when you and I were talking, was like, yeah, you brought up shame. What was the shame about? And so tell me what some of the shame feelings were in relation to grieving and caretaking and all that.
Well, shame happened way before Kim went into her physical situation. I realized that I'd probably lived with shame all my life.
Mm.
It became a part of my personality. And that's what I didn't understand. And that's what grieving uh, showed me.
Mm.
Because in shame, you can never be good enough.
Mm.
There's always more you can do.
Right.
And you come to the place in caregiving. Yeah, I wish someone actually, Alice told me this. She said, John, understand because she was a caregiver for her dad for I think 13 years. And she said, John, when you enter into caregiving, you have to realize that it's not going to end well.
Mm.
Caregiving never ends well. And this is, Alice or Dr. Alice, Pastor Alice, and she's seen a lot of wonderful miracles and people being healed. And so for her to say, when you enter into caregiving, it doesn't end well, that was very insightful for me. But the shame became a part of my personality. And so I recognized that shame would dictate my thoughts of how I respond in situations.
Mm.
And normally, because of the way that, God made me, the way that I'm wired, it would be, what else can I do?
Mm.
What else can I do? And so when she was starting to become less able to take care of herself, like she was very proud of, and like we all are, we're very independent. When I started to do things for her that she could do. And so she looked at me, she said, "John, will you let me do this?" And the thoughts went to, I'm not doing it good enough. In other words, my thoughts focused me on me,
Mm-hmm.
not on her.
Her.
And that's what shame does. Shame is designed to focus you on your pain,
Mm.
on what you haven't done, what your responsibility or false responsibility usually is.
I like that false responsibility. That that stuck out to me in the book. I know for myself in my own personal journey, shame has been a big deal, and identifying it. And when I'm in shame, I'm critical. I'm not nice to be around. And I realize, and also it's given me grace for other people as I've learned more about it. When someone's in shame and sometimes I'll see someone, I call it misbehaving. And once in a while, I'll tell someone my age, I'll be like, why are you misbehaving?
Why are
Eh,
you acting like a human?
why are you act? And in so much as I start to learn that whatever they're giving on the outside, they're giving to themselves 10 times more on the inside. So for me, it's been okay, identifying it, and then how do I get out of it? And you really put a lot into gratitude, and as you and I were talking about, shame, and for me, that the way I describe it is shame is like this pack of wolves that's stalking me in the background. It's really not out there up front, like it's super obvious. It just kind of sneaks in on you. And next thing you know, I'm not happy with my behavior or happy how I'm reacting to people. But in this case, the shame and the caretaking is you could always be doing more. And, you donated a kidney so that you could keep Kim off of dialysis. And you still had the shamer in your head,
That's right. That's right.
which is significant. I don't think I mean, that's like, hey, if I can give part of my body for you, it's not even a second thought. And you couldn't give her your kidney, but it moved her up the list.
Correct. And it was right before COVID. And so she didn't get her kidney.
Mm-hmm.
And she went on dialysis for 4 months later. But actually, David, on the way over here, there's a man that just lost his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a very long relationship as well, about 45 years. So I was talking to him about shame because he finished well. I mean, he was faithful, he finished well. He was with her through a very quick hospice situation. And he was starting to think, what could I have done differently? And about 9 months after Kim passed, I was starting to get some sort of semblance of life, direction. And the thought came to me, you didn't do enough. And if you would have done more, Kim would be alive.
Mm.
And I really started listening to that voice because it focused me on my pain.
Mm.
And my pain at that moment was shame. It started to become the reason for my life was shame.
Mm.
I know it sounds strange, but it's reality.
Does, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It does, but it doesn't. So it drives and controls. And one of the things, one of the chapters is about fix it. You wanted to fix everything. You wanted to fix the whole situation, and it was trying to think of some of the things you fixed, but the kidney was part of the fix it. Hey, we can fix this. We can get Kim back, and all these things you tried to do, and that's really your control and shame, and maybe I'm not sure where guilt is in there somewhere. You know, if guilt is a thing, and those two are so interchangeable. A lot of times, feel not good enough, but feel some guilt, and it is one of those things. I did want to, because when you this book you've written, and I know you've shared it with some people, people that are in that situation, and you want to give them hope, because you talk about chronic hopelessness.
Chronic hopelessness is a result of that grief. And actually, the man that I was speaking to on the way over here, I asked him what his takeaway was from the book. And he said, John, I'd have to say that as I read your book and as I finished your book, I realized that there's hope.
Mm.
And because of that, he actually gave the book to his son to read. And that really touched my heart because we go through things to learn and to grow so we can make the world a better place.
Yeah.
If one person can not go through the pain of grief because of gratitude, if they could focus on the gratitude. I was focused on gratitude before I realized the help that it was giving to me, the strength that it was giving to me. Because guilt, your brain cannot be grateful and guilty at the same time.
Mm.
Your brain cannot be grateful and shamed at the same time. It's impossible. It can't fire the same. And this again was borne out in research that I did, with neurophysicists. And so with gratitude, it helped me to not enter into that chronic guilt and chronic shame, because that's really the way I lived. And it's interesting you said about your childhood. Well, I believe that I entered into shame because my family had 3 boys and I was the last shot to be a girl.
Yeah.
And so when I came out a male, I think my parents were a little disappointed because, that was, 60 plus years ago before they had sonograms and, they know, the reveal parties.
Right.
Way before that. And so it was a surprise. It was a shock.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would imagine the girls' clothes and all of that, I just got a lot of hand-me-downs from my brothers. But I believe those things impact our psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have any proof for it. I don't think we really can prove, the things that we hear in the womb.
Right.
It's hard to interview someone in the womb. But I think that that's a part of it because I entered into this man pleasing or this desire to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing I found that was shame. When I would get that guilt and shame, I just go do something good.
That was your fix.
That was my fix. Go do something good. So when Kim entered into more and more physical issues, I was starting to feel good about myself by being there and serving, which is great because she needed it. But that opportunity for that closeness of relationship, of abandoning to each other, I didn't experience until she was on her deathbed.
That's really insightful to me, to hear and to listen to and reflect on my own. Am I the people pleasing, or can I feel better about myself by doing these things? Now, you spent decades in the ministry, which is a perfect job for that personality you described, because it is never ending how many people need help and love and support you can give and give and give and give, and and still have more to go.
Oh,
It would be hard to find balance for you.
well, put it this way, my oldest, my daughter came to me when she was getting ready, I think, she was in high school, getting ready to go on the mission field with Team Mania Ministries. And so I started talking to her. And she looked at me and she said, Dad, or she said, yeah, she said, Dad, I know you as my pastor, but I don't know you as my dad.
Mm,
And then I realized that I would be listening to my kids as a pastor. And as what are we supposed to do as pastors? Fix things.
hmm
And if I focus on fixing things, then I really don't have to enter into the emotion of it. And there was a time when I actually said I was watching Sabrina with Kim and the movie Sabrina. And there's this line that Harrison Ford says, that he was the first world's living heart donor.
mm,
And I said, that's me. That's exactly who I am. Because I can go into any situation and not feel a thing so that I can fix it, so that I can be the strong one. And if I could have gone back, learned that, and then started pastoring, I would have pastored completely different.
mm.
When I hugged people, it wouldn't have been, hey, it would have been, I care.
Yeah.
Not for me, but for you.
I realized that in my own health journey around church. I've grew up in church, and it was not uncommon to put hands on people and pray for them if they were sick or they needed some sort of emotional healing, that type of thing. And when I was I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at age 27. And when I would be new to a Bible study group or men's group, and you would introduce yourself, and I would introduce myself as Dave. I do this, I do that. I do live with MS. And the first thing they want to do is pray for me, because they do want to fix it, and they do care, right? For me, though, it was I quit telling people I had MS because I didn't want to. I wanted them to just kind of see me and not see my wounds or what I carried, and I kind of felt like they were uncomfortable with my pain. And I don't know if that's where the fix it comes in, because sometimes I know when somebody's telling me a problem, I just want to fix it for them because they're suffering. I don't want to see anybody suffer, and that keeps me busy. And I never really have to suffer, or I never really have to focus on my own pain. In this story, pain was unavoidable, and I think that we don't want to enter into a really, really intimate love because we could get hurt. And so it's almost like an arm's length love when we stay busy, and because we don't want to stop and feel the pain of our shame, because that is a pain. I would say I would say if I stay busy, because if anyone who knows me, I get up at 3:30 in the morning. I ride my bike for 20 miles. I go to work. I work for 12 hours, if not 14 hours. I come home, and I might sneak off to the gym and go work out because that is just how I do life, and that's the way I've done it. I've stayed busy, and so, but in relationship, there's been a level of I didn't with my girlfriend or fiance. I'm not really sure where we're at right now. I mean, I'm going to marry her. She knows it. But there was a part of me that held back. I tell her I didn't really show you my underbelly. I didn't expose that to her, and I certainly didn't expose it to God. I was gonna I was gonna be that serving guy. And in this case, you've done that your whole life. And this love, I mean, this is a love story. And it's not like a love story like Happily Ever After. It's a love story where you literally, it was selfless love. And that is the point that you got to. Uh, so sitting, giving her dialysis, what was there conversation? Was there discussion? What did that look like?
Well, she was on dialysis for 2 years, and it really became a routine. In fact, she was on dialysis when she passed. And I remember disconnecting her from the cycler or the dialysis machine. And I was taking the alcohol wipes and wiping it to make sure that she didn't get infection.
Hmm.
And I started laughing because she doesn't have to worry about infection anymore,
Hmm.
but it was just part of the routine. And it became part of us, our story. And I realized the power of that when I was talking to someone, and I realized, and this was about 3 months after Kim passed, I missed doing dialysis for her
Hmm.
because every night, 10 o'clock, every morning, 6 a.m.,
Hmm.
10 p.m., you put her on, 6 a.m., you take her off, you know, and it's something that I did for her. And so when you do something for someone else in that selfless love, it becomes a part of you.
Mm.
And you said something that, you didn't want to necessarily enter into a relationship because you didn't want to get hurt.
Mhm.
Well, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
You're going to get hurt whether you're in a relationship or you're not in a relationship. You're going to get hurt because life is painful.
Hmm.
And I don't think I've ever preached that, by the way, but it might,
Not a popular
it
sermon,
wouldn't be
but
oh,
meaningful, not
great,
popular.
painful. I thought he carries my pains, Jesus carries my pains. Yes, he does, but he wants you to carry them together.
Mm.
He wants us to experience it. There's a reason why in Hebrews it says he can be touched with the feelings of our pain or feelings of our infirmities. He made us to be that way.
Right.
And he feels that not because he's God, but because he's fully man as well.
Mm.
And so feeling that pain. And I mean, I think God kind of set me up because it wasn't something that, I wanted to become, this in this selfless love. I didn't have any thought about that because at 14, I entered
Mm.
into a relationship with Kim and we grew in love. There was never a time when I fell in love with Kim.
Yeah.
I grew in love. We grew together.
Hmm.
And you mentioned about my now wife, uh, Dr. Alice. And, you know, the pain that I went through because I was challenged to open my heart again to love.
Mm.
And, the person who challenged me to do that?
Alice?
Kim.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. On her deathbed,
Uh-huh.
she says, John, I want you to promise me you'll do 3 things. And this kind of, takes the covers back off of Kim as far as who she really was, the
Uh-huh.
great woman that she was. And she said, I want you to do 3 things. I want you to take care of the kids
Mm. because
because they'll need you. I want you to take care of the grandkids because you'll need them.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to get remarried. I want you to find the woman. And so I was tracking with her on the first 2. But when
Yeah.
she got to number 3,
Made no sense.
I told someone who was dying, they're crazy. I started laughing and said, "You're crazy."
Uh-huh.
And then I started crying and said, "How could I ever?" And at that moment, there was this furtherance of this abandonment, this selfless love
Mm.
abandonment, because she was my life.
Mhm.
And I believe in order to finish well, there has to be that selfless love, there has to be that abandonment
Mm.
to each other. And then after Kim passed, it's, I'll never forget when I was challenged again with those words: "I want you to find a wife." And then I knew that I had to open my heart again
Mm.
to that pain,
Right.
not the joy, but the pain. And that is the only pain that I deal with today, is the thought of losing Alice.
Mhm.
And the love relationship, and I really can't understand this, it's just something that is God, I believe. But the relationship, the selfless love that I ended Kim's relationship, that's where I picked up with Alice.
Mm.
And I know, I think I'm a double blessed man, because I know the the joy of growing in love with someone and falling in love with someone. And it's different. It's different. But the level of challenge, of pain,
Mm.
is still there. And I remember the last thing that I was grateful for with Kim was one more day to see those eyes.
Mhm.
One more day to see those
Green
eyes.
eyes.
Oh, yeah, the green eyes. And I realized when I married Alice, you know what I was so grateful for? One more day to see those eyes. There was a shift that
Uh-huh.
happened that I'm still grateful for that. Now there's other things. I've grown now, other things. I used to be grateful that she was breathing, one more breath.
Uh-huh.
And that's the way it was with Kim. I was grateful for one more
Mm.
breath. And then it went to the eyes, and then it went back to the breath. And so being grateful for the things you're grateful for now will carry on through the grief and even after the grief. Because I have no clue, if it wasn't Alice, it might have been just in faith looking in the eyes of Jesus.
Mm.
Because another thing, and this might be getting off topic a little bit, but one of the things that I wanted to do with my new life was to reach out to men
Mm.
and to talk about covenant relationship, which is covenant to me is a selfless love relationship. And so if you're not married, your covenant relationship is with Jesus.
Mm.
If you are married, your covenant relationship is with your wife.
Mhm.
And then, and so I've experienced both, both relationships,
Mm.
and both prepare us for that selfless love. So you're not married,
Not married, hopefully soon to be.
soon to be,
I
but
was I was engaged, and then for whatever reason I decided not to be, and it was the worst pain I ever felt to have that separation with Shauna. And I quickly realized that I made a mistake, but it was for fear of that pain. I think that I kept her at arm's length, and I didn't fully give my heart. I was being protective because I didn't want pain. And back to pain in general, I was talking about my uh, disease and people not necessarily being comfortable with my pain. They want to fix it. And you and I were talking about, Jesus, when he shows up on scene with Lazarus, first thing he does is cry. And there's something, and I think that was the thing I recognized about you immediately was that you weren't just going to fix me. And what your daughter was saying was, you're my pastor, but not my dad. She wanted you. And sometimes it is meaningful to have someone sit in your pain with you. And, and when I feel like our culture is pain adverse.
Mm.
We got painkillers. We've got all kinds of numbing, addiction through the roof. People are avoiding pain. But pain is what brings richness to life. It doesn't sound like, oh, yeah, let me sign up for some of that. But you're saying it happens no matter what. It's going to happen.
It does. And I do believe as you enter into selfless love, the pain goes deeper,
Mm,
but the love goes deeper.
yeah.
The deeper you love, the deeper the pain. So the way you look at that, and I'm not a masochist or anything like that, you know, I don't go looking for pain, but feeling when you enter into emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
you understand the value of pain
Mm,
and you're not afraid of it. It's not fun, but you're not afraid of it because you look for ways to grow. Pain, I mean, no pain, no,
no gain.
exactly. We do that in our workout, but we don't do that in our emotions, but it's the same thing. Pain is designed, I believe, for growth. So that's why gratefully grieving. I want people to get this book, to read this book, because there's one other thing that this guy who just lost his wife told me. He just read the book and he said, John, he actually said two things. He said, John, there's hope,
Mm,
but I know I'm not alone.
mm,
And I believe that's what this book does. It's almost a friend
yeah.
that's with you where your pain is. I don't want to focus on my pain.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share my pain, to relate to other people's pain, to give them the hope that it's okay to embrace their pain,
Right.
no matter what it is, because that's the only way to grow. There's a lot of people that don't grow. And I actually reached a point where uh, I went for a 15,000-mile road trip. I wanted to visit my coaches, visit my clients, and visit family, and just experience what Kim and I always wanted to experience. Just wanted to do it. So I did. I just took off. And I remember driving very fast on a road because there were no cars there. And thinking,
Mm,
wow, what's there to live for? What's there to live for? And I mean, I wasn't pained. It wasn't negative. It's just I realized that my whole life, as I knew it, was gone.
mm,
And at that moment, I had a choice. I had a choice. Am I going to live that way? Am I going to live that way in grief? Or am I going to grow out of it and trust God with the rest of my life, whatever that looked like?
right.
And every day I wake up, and you hear it's a new day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I understand that more than ever before because it's a brand new life. Everything's new.
Right.
Everything's new. And I made a choice just a couple months back when I realized everything's new. Why can't I live that way?
Mm.
Why can't I just be grateful for a new day, a
Yeah.
new experience? Not necessarily a new experience of pain, but a new experience of life that causes joy and, yes, causes pain, but both cause us to grow.
Well, I'm 47 years old. I don't know how old you are. You're not a woman, so I can ask.
Um, yes, absolutely. I just turned 68.
68. So you got 20 years on me. And you're right. You have something to share with men. I know you've been impactful to me in the short time that we've known each other. And I will say that one of the lines in your book is you were, I think it was pretty recent after Kim passed. You got together with some friends, and you said once in a while it's nice to just have Jesus in skin. And I think of that, and I think of that hug because that's what I experienced. I've known Christ since I was young, and there's a certain essence and a love and a sensation that I understand. And when I hugged you, that is what I experienced because He's been in our shoes. He's been to hell and back,
Yes.
and so it's the comfort of that, and to look at pain differently in life. Early on in when I was a young man, I met this guy and he explained to me, he drew life. He said, if it's at the top, life is good, and then it comes down at the bottom and it's bad, and it's good again and bad. And he goes, there's a line across the middle. Everything above it is good, and everything below it is
Mm.
bad. And I said, okay, yeah, that's about right. And he said that line becomes the idol. He said, and life becomes meaningful when you just remove the line. It's all life. And it's rich because we feel the full range of emotions. And that's what I think about with grief. Sometimes we're pleading with God, this can't be happening. Sometimes we could be elated, and sometimes we're absolutely overwhelmed in pain and just can't even get out of bed. Uh, so through your process, there's a lot of pain here because of this deep love for Kim. And I don't know how long it's been since she actually passed.
Yeah, it's going on 3 years.
3 years. And because of your gratitude work and your you call it holistic health. So it's the way you eat, it's the way you take care of your mind, it's the way you exercise. It's all those things that you do in order to take care of yourself. But I would imagine if I had to say, what is the number one thing, you're going to tell me gratefulness, because it's gratefully grieving that today you're not a mess after 46 year, of marriage, 50 years of love, growing in love. And when we were talking the other day, he said, Dave, I let the pain pass through me. Describe that for me.
Well, the pain passing through really isn't a spiritual thing. It starts with you're not afraid of pain.
Mm.
And I already mentioned about you see pain as an opportunity for growth. And I mean that's not psychobabble. That truly is the way I live.
Mm.
And so when either shame revisits,
Mm-hmm.
I when I understand that, oh yeah, that's shame, I say, oh, good to see you again, old friend.
Yeah.
And then I simply do the opposite of what it's telling me to do. But as you feel that pain and recognize that it's an opportunity for growth,
Mm.
and you focus on that and focus on what's next,
Mm.
the pain will subside. It passes through. It does its work, whatever that is, whatever God designed it to be, but it passes through you.
Mm.
You don't want to meditate on it. You don't want to hold it as part of your personality. You want to just say, okay, it's necessary for some reason, let it pass through. Let it do its work. And you mentioned about how Christ was, went to hell and back. Well, he was the only one that really did.
Right.
But I remember as you were talking, I remember the time when I just left Kim. It was during COVID. So I took her, she was in congestive heart failure, and I took her to the ER
Mm.
and I wouldn't leave. They actually brought security to kick the pastor out of the ER room. And so, and then I would just stay in the parking lot. So, anyway, I didn't know if I was going to see
Mm.
Kim ever again.
Yeah.
And I went home and I was taking a shower, crying out to God. And I said, God. And I'll never forget this. He said, I am with you.
Mm.
I am with you. And then I said, well, God, thank you, but I really want you to be with Kim right now.
Yeah.
I was looking for some hope that she was going to
Yeah.
be well, some miracle. And all he would say is, I'm with you. And this is something in our Christian faith. When we go through these painful ordeals, we can see that in the shadow of death, the valley of the shadow of death
Mm.
is when the shepherd becomes personal. And that's what I experienced, Dave. And that was the beginning of me transitioning into a selfless love.
Mm.
Just be with them. You don't have to fix them. Just be with them.
And Jesus knew that Lazarus was going to wake up, right? But he still took time to be with him, cry with him.
And to be with the people that were in pain.
Yeah.
And then when he prays, he says, Father, I know I really don't have to do this,
Mm.
but what's best for them?
Yeah.
And the selfless love kind of is that way too. We do things that are not necessary for us, but we do it for them. There are things that I did for Kim on her last week on this earth that I know that I couldn't have done it without just the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a time when I just stood up and I said, God, I just can't do this. I
Mm-hmm.
just can't do this. And he said, I am with you. And then I did.
Yeah.
I did what I didn't think I could do and finished well.
Well, I want to wrap up with this, and I highly, whether you're going through grief or not, highly recommend this book for the experience. And it's some of the richness in life is that when I read the book, I get to grow from your experience. And you talk about pain and what does pain do? And I mean, pain moves us. I'll sit in this chair until I become uncomfortable, and then I might move. And so pain definitely moves us, but it is our greatest teacher, or maybe one of them. But you wrote, grief is not a healing process as much as a process of learning and growing. So with everything, the love that you had for all those years, everything that you went through, uh, what is the growth that you smile? Makes you smile. There's got to be a piece of it. I learned something that just is so meaningful to my life.
I think in answer to your question, which is a great question, when you come to the place of that selfless love,
Mm.
the only thing that really matters is what's in front of you right now, the person that's in front of you right now. But ultimately, the one like Dr. Alice has now become my life.
Yeah.
And everything else is, of course, other than my kids and family, everything else is just very. My dad told me this. He said, "Son, hold everything lightly." In other words, just continually surrender it to God. Hold everything
Yeah.
lightly. And I think that's very true. But the place of serenity
Mm-hmm.
is what makes me smile right now. I live a life of peace
Yeah.
and serenity.
Mm.
Doesn't matter what I do, it's what's inside of me,
Yeah.
a life of peace.
A life of peace. I like that answer. Uh, because that's what I would wake up to want to do. You don't hear it too much in church, but the serenity prayer it really
Yes.
comes across because in this book you had to relinquish control. And the way it goes, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and then the wisdom to know the difference. And the wisdom to know the difference is really becoming emotionally intelligent. Yeah, that's not something I can do anything about. I got to let that one go. I don't hold that one lightly. I just got to let it go. And so that's the wisdom to know the difference. Um, but I think through your process and your work is I don't find people as much. I want to say your generation like you're old.
I'll let that pain pass through me.
But even a lot of people don't talk about emotion because people could talk about happy things. It's happy, feels good, but as far as pain, but there's all kinds of. I mean, if you put all the emotion up on the wall, it'd be lots of different words, whether it's indifferent, whether it's shame, or whether you're in guilt, or whether you're in just joy and bliss, and there's all kinds of words for it. But people don't talk about emotion. But emotion, I think, is the way we get to experience God. And you read, I think sometimes Christians think it's supposed to be all pretty, but I don't find pretty in the Psalms. I find the psalmist, like in dire straits in half of it, and then totally praising the Lord in the second half of it. And I'm going, hey, there's a pendulum that swings in this life, and this life it's going to have its moments, and the sooner we get okay with pain and surrendering and allowing God to guide our lives and say, okay, I can't control this, but wherever you're taking me, I guess I'm going.
Well, we are created in His image and likeness.
Mm.
So I think that's something very important to remember. We have the ability to feel pain because God has the ability to feel pain. He
Yeah.
made us this way. And however He made us, we shouldn't be afraid of it.
Mm.
The ability to feel pain, joy, guilt, shame. I know God's not guilty or shameful. I think that's part of the fall, result of the fall. But the growth out of it is certainly the way God made us, the way God designed us. And, if you can hold up the copy of the book, I wrestled with the cover
Mm.
because that's not that's not a cover that represents a love story,
Oh, I want to. Yeah, no, I don't want to jump into that.
but yet it is.
It is. Yeah.
If you want to enter into a selfless love, get ready to experience the depths of pain and the depths of peace.
Mm. Depths of pain and depths of peace. I think something that I'll take away from this that I learned about gratitude is that I can't be in shame and be grateful at the same time. I mean, I might have already known that, but I just never had it just put right there like that. And and that the depth that we can experience pain, we can experience joy. So if we limit our pain because we numb it out, we limit our joy at the same time.
That's right.
So, John, I'm really I learned a lot in this conversation, and if you get a chance, don't get a chance, go pick up Gratefully Grieving. There's a lot to be learned, and it is a good love story, and it's different than the love story that you might think about, happily ever after. Because caretaking doesn't. It's got an ending to it, right?
Yes, it does. It
And
has an ending, but it also, you do the head work and the heart work, it has a wonderful beginning.
I will take that with me,
Thank you.
and I appreciate it. It's impactful for me, and I'm glad that I knew Alice because I got to meet you. So, and I'm excited for the years to come and doing more podcasts with you.
Sounds great, Dave.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. And the other thing that I've taken from you as a mentor now in my life is, every day you wake up, we talked about vows, right? Covenant relationship, we talked about vows. But you say, vows, that's my day. What are my vows? And you say, to love Alice better today than yesterday. And the day after that is to love her better today than yesterday. And
1% better every day.
1% better. It's the Kaizen. That's the
Yeah.
incremental. So I have implemented that in my life. Is that how do I want to love better today than I did yesterday?
Excellent.
And part of loving better is understanding myself more in a way that there's the things that bog me down. My
Yeah.
shame and my guilt or whatever that would bog me down, and getting grateful and getting out of that so I can get into more love, and more love, more joy, and certainly more pain. It sounds masochistic. Yes.
Well, can I leave you with a challenge?
Yes.
You and every other man that is uh, either going to be married or
Mhm.
is married, to look at the vows that you make before God and your spouse or your bride, and use that as a daily action plan.
Mm.
You said, I love Alice more every day. Well, it's true. And I focus on that.
Mm.
You know, one of the things I love to do is in the morning just roll over and whisper, I love you more,
Mm.
or when I see her, just, I love you more. And, it's not this competition of I love you more. No, I love you more. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
It's just saying it and focusing on it. But the vows that you're going to make, what does it really mean to love and to cherish?
Mm.
And how can you get better at that every day
Mm-hmm.
and focus on action to do that?